like to do a deeper dive on some of the very tangible challenges that startups in the mobility space are contending with at the on-ground level, and how new age entrepreneurs can essentially both compete and collaborate with the pre-existing larger traditional players in this space. And to tackle this topic, we are joined by a panel of subject matter experts next, and I ask that you please join me in welcoming them on stage. To moderate the conversation, we have partner and automotive sector leader at Deloitte India, Rajiv Singh. Sir, if I could have you back on stage once more. And joining him, a series of thought leaders, I ask that you please put your hands together and join me in welcoming the co-founder and vice chairman of Sun Mobility, Chetan Maini. Managing director at Hero Eco Group, Naveen Munjal. Managing director at Volvo Auto India, Charles Frump. Business head of the mobility division at Panasonic India, Pankaj Rana. And co-founder at Ather Energy, Swapnil Jain. Thank you, gentlemen. Rajiv, take it away.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot. And I'm sure that the lunch was good, and it's going to be a tough task. That's the reason we thought that let's put the most interesting session immediately after lunch. So, firstly, I would like to thank all my panel members here. I think this is one of the best gatherings that I'm seeing. Nothing better that could beat this. Startups play a very, very important role, I think, in the economy of a lot of countries. It's one of those engines which drives innovation in every country. It's also one of those engines which ensures that you remain technology-wise a little ahead on the curve. And they play a very important role because startups are the ones which take all the risk. They take the risk in terms of testing out different business models. They take the risk in terms of finding out what is the right way, where the economics is working. And hence, it's extremely important to create an ecosystem which would help in terms of build-up of these startups. With that, let me move on to what will be the format of this session. I think just like you have seen since morning, we'll continue with the same format, which is we'll have one of each of the panel members come and speak for about 8 or 10 minutes. Followed with that, we'll have a Q&A session. But given that we are running a little late, what we will do is immediately after the presentations, we'll open it for a Q&A session with the entire team out here. Let us start with the youngest person on this panel. So may I request Swapnil, if you could share your thoughts.
Good afternoon, everyone. First session after lunch, everyone might be a bit sleepy. I'll try to do what I best to keep everyone engaged. So we are Ather Energy. I'm not sure if everyone has heard about it. So we are a startup from Bangalore. We work in the segment of electric two-wheeler. A brief introduction about us for who doesn't know. We started in 2013 from IIT Madras. Two of us, classmates, we had a wild idea that electric vehicles are definitely making sense at least from a technology perspective, and in few years it will become very much commercially viable. So with that thought and the business opportunity, we kind of jumped in, and in 2013 really didn't have much of an experience or anything much to lose. So we thought that's the best place to start. We've gone through almost 5 years of product development. In the meanwhile, we have had secure funding from Hero MotoCorp, Tiger Global, Flipkart founders, and to a quantum of about 62 million. We have a R&D facility in Bangalore. We have a plant in Bangalore which is starting to roll out vehicles, the first set of vehicles for our customers. After 5 years of product development, we finally have a product out there which customers are enjoying. And we have 2 vehicles and one and charging infrastructure across Bangalore. So this is a quick brief of Ather and what we have been doing. To just walk you through a brief journey of our first startup, we started in 2013, and the first thing was that, okay, electric vehicles is something which definitely is going to make sense, and we need to really figure out what is it that's stopping the growth. So we had a certain target customer in mind, and we went and spoke to them and what would they want in an electric vehicle. And three things were quite clear from the customer, that it is performance, that they want top speed, acceleration, and fast charging. These three are not compromisable. It has to be on par or better than a petrol vehicle. Second was styling. It was very, very much important. It's a very everyone feels proud about the vehicle they own, so the styling was something which came out as a second most important thing. And third was obviously range anxiety, being an electric vehicle. Since charging infrastructure turned out to be a very important aspect of what the customers needed from this vehicle. So this is what the customer told us, and other things which we perceive that which customers does not talk about is that the whole experience itself, the ownership experience itself. People wanted to have a better experience of owning a vehicle. They were looking for a fresh breath of air in the whole automotive industry on how ownership experience, starting from placing the order to actually delivery and service, all of that. Then the other subtle things were that if we build an electric vehicle, it's definitely going to be more expensive than a petrol vehicle. And you can't just sell a vehicle which performs as good as a petrol vehicle and make it a lot more expensive. So you really need to have a value add into it. And that's where we kind of came up with the idea of smart vehicles, because it was also very evident that along with electric, smarts was something else which the automotive industry was moving towards. So with that thought process in mind, we started. We had conceptualized what kind of product we wanted. We knew that we wanted a very high acceleration, a good range, good top speed. And especially one of the biggest problem in India is that you have really steep gradients. They go beyond whatever is the prescribed government limits. The prescribed limit is 7 degrees, and you have 18 degrees of gradient across, at least in Bangalore. And that was very, very important aspect of owning a two-wheeler. Other things, which is the smarts, which means that it's a 7-inch dashboard, park assist, connectivity, onboard navigation. These are the smart vehicle features, which is something which people are looking forward to in the next generation of their vehicles. Along with that, we're changing the ownership experience of the vehicle, not having a traditional dealership, going with a own Ather-owned service, Ather-owned experience centers, where you would actually come, experience every aspect of the vehicle, understand the vehicle in depth, because electric vehicle is something which is new for customers. They don't really understand everything about it, and we had to educate them about every single aspect. They had a lot of anxiety about the vehicle, and we had to really work towards easing up those anxiety. Along with that, having forums and doing a lot of content on the web itself, so that when a customer walks into the experience center, they know a lot about the vehicle already, and they have questions which can be answered by our staff. So the app, the forum, the website, Ather Space, all of that was geared towards giving a different experience. Along with that, we had to change the experience of ownership as well, not just buying the vehicle, but ownership, which means changing the way service is done, changing the way payments are done. Everything, we kind of put all of that in together. You don't have a separate service. You don't go monthly for service. You have one plan which you subscribe to, and you kind of we take care of your service, of your connectivity requirements, and any sort of during the life cycle of the vehicle, whatever expenses you will have is kind of taken care by that one subscription plan. So this is how we're changing the ownership experience, and thirdly, the charging experience. So we realized that obviously the grid was something which was the charging infrastructure was something was very critical for the customers, and we had to ease out the anxiety of the customers, and hence we started installing charging stations across Bangalore. Our plan is to go and get up to 40 charging stations, which will let you charge the vehicle in less than an hour. And not just for Ather vehicles, just for any electric vehicles, because it's about the ecosystem and not really just about Ather. These are the locations where we have our charging stations. So coming to the main main topic. The reason I ran through all of this is to just give an understanding of what all Aether has been doing and what kind of challenges we have had as a startup while building Aether. I think for every startup, the three main challenges are the money, the talent, and the supporting ecosystem. For hardware, in the hardware industry, the supporting ecosystem is really critical. As the country is moving forward and a lot of entrepreneurs are coming in, the money is coming in. There is definitely a lot of lack of talent. But what is more critical for this audience is the ecosystem which needs to be there to support startups. So when we started, one of the biggest hurdle we had as two young engineers just graduated with almost zero funding and trying to build a two-wheeler was that no player would be obviously ready to work with us. Even today, we find it hard for some of the big players to get to work with us. And that was the biggest challenge which we faced from the ecosystem. Because yes, you want to build a vehicle, but you also need you cannot build a hardware company without having the support from the ecosystem. You need to have support from tier 1, tier 2, and every possible places. Obviously, not to say government policies as well. So this was the biggest challenge, and I think what I would like to address here is that how the existing industry can help startups pick up much faster and bloom is by providing that support. When startups coming, obviously you don't really have a very clear like a sales projection. You don't really know how many vehicles you're going to build in the next year or the year after, because you really have very limited understanding of, or at least a very small marketing team to actually get you those numbers. But what definitely you have is, with working with a startup, the biggest thing is that you have the agility, you have the passion, and you have the something disruptive which is coming out there, and that is something which should be valued in the ecosystem, and because it is something which is actually helpful for not just the startup but also for the established industry, because it's a new concept which is coming in, which means that there's a new market which is opening up. And when you work with a startup, you actually get insights into a new industry which is coming up. All the vendors who work with us, all the tier ones who work with us in the initial days, have a lot of insights now on what is happening into EV industry, what kind of products are people wanting to build, and what kind of challenges you have when you're building an electric vehicle. So there's a good synergy which happens when a startup and established players work together. There is no definite business outcome in probably next year. Yes, it will probably not affect your P&L in the next year. But what it affects is a strategy. As an established company, it's also important that you're investing in future, investing in the strategy of your organization. And working with startups is something which definitely gives you that. It helps. And one thing which I can definitely vouch for is that every startup will push the limits, will try to push the limits of what's already existing in the industry. And it's actually quite, and most of the people who have worked with us have understood that and have actually gained quite a lot from working with us because we are trying to push the limits on every front. We are trying to push the limits on cells. We are trying to push the limits on batteries, on motors, everywhere, and that's quite interesting, because now they are not working in a constrained environment. There's no a simple RFQ against which you're building a part. It's a lot more in-depth code development which is happening, and that's quite valuable for any new player or even an established player out there. So I think that is one thing which is very critical for to have a synergy between the existing players and startups, and there's enough support, even if there is no immediate gain which is coming out of it. And with that kind of a support, the startups definitely will be able to grow. That's the biggest difference between a hardware startup and a software startup. Software startup, the ecosystem is actually quite open. Like you have a lot of places where you can actually tap into for a startup, for a software startup to grow. We need to create that kind of ecosystem for hardware startups as well. That's pretty much from my side. I probably might have overshot a bit.
Thanks, Sophia. This was really amazing. You spoke so many things, actually, just in the last few minutes. You spoke about three things that hit me.
which are required when you are setting up a startup. One thing that you, of course, didn't mention, which I believe was already there in you, is the guts. The guts to do something which is extremely important for an entrepreneur to take that path which no one has actually taken in the past. And also the way you spoke about giving a completely differentiated experience, and you didn't talk about only a product experience, but you spoke about the experience which cut across right from buying a vehicle to getting it serviced to getting it charged, and you didn't bother about when the infrastructure is going to come. You decided to put up your own infrastructure for charging the scooters. Amazing. Thank you. Thanks a lot for being here. Maybe you could take your seat and we'll move on. I'll request Chetan if you could share your thoughts. Yes, Swapnil, you can come here.
Good afternoon, everyone. A little older than Swapnil, but our startup is 18 months young. So great to be here. You know, I think the whole morning's been discussed, a lot of things of transformation, and you know, just to reconnect the dots, that I do believe that the future is going to be on electric, shared, autonomous, connected, and powered by renewable energy. Each of these businesses are happening by themselves. The transition that I see, or the opportunities I see, are in the dots that connect all of them together. For example, as you think of electric and shared and renewable energy, you're starting to see how energy and mobility come together, and these are going to be newer business models as you take this forward. So I think we're in a very interesting space where transformation is happening not just at the technology level, but also probably at a cultural level of things like shared that are coming through. And I think at that level, you're going to see a much bigger transformation as we take this forward. So everyone's been talking. We had a conversation earlier a lot about cars, and I wanted to put a context that, you know, I come from Bangalore, and 43% of people go in buses, and around 45% use 2- and 3-wheelers. So 88% of our city moves on 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, and buses. And what are we doing to create a future sustainable world for an area where almost 90% of our people are traveling in area, and how much focus we should be giving? And I think this is very critical for us to look at it. And in 20 years of working on electric vehicles on this area, I think that they really haven't taken off because of 3 challenges, especially in the shared market. And that's the high cost related to batteries. It's about the range anxiety. It's a psychological thing. It's also a technology area. And the long refueling time. Whatever you say, you know, 4 hours, 8 hours of charging, 1 hour of fast charging. For a consumer, anything more than 5 minutes seems like eternity on this area. The other big thing is that, you know, trillions of dollars have been spent on the regular fueling ecosystem that allows you to have a solution for all forms of transportation, which is your gasoline system. But when you think of electrics, there isn't an equivalent system like that creates a ubiquitous solution for all of this front. So it's very important to address these 4 challenges for us as society, and I think there's a lot of potential for startups to play as we're going to such a transformation. So interestingly, if you take electric vehicles that are more expensive, but if you remove the batteries and batteries and chargers and thermal management, you get cost neutral. And when I say cost neutral, it also means same performance, same top speed, same acceleration, no compromise on any performance parameter, but you also get cost parity on it, which is not possible today if you include the batteries. And then if you have cost parity on this system, and you look at the cost of energy, the total cost of energy is actually cheaper. So from a consumer's perspective, he can buy a vehicle, be it a 2-wheeler or a scooter or a 3-wheeler or a bus or a car, that could be the same price or cheaper, and the cost of energy being less. And if that's the case, the transformation in society is going to be significantly larger on this front. So to look at this, we looked at 4 things to say, how do we create a solution that could go into urban transportation that is connected, cost-effective, intelligent, convenient to consumers, and highly scalable. And that's very important. The challenge we have is the growth rate of 10% that we are having here. We have to probably look at very scalable solutions on this front. So I'll share with you a short thing what we've done on the 2- and 3-wheeler side. So we've created a ubiquitous solution for all 2 and 3 wheelers, and it's a kiosk-based system here. And you are today being able to read everything off a smartphone, look at where your infrastructure is, look at what's the range you have on your vehicle. You're able to drive up on this area. You can use it across all platforms of vehicle. You can use 1, 2, or 3 batteries. That gives you smaller amount of range, larger range. It caters to around 24 million vehicles produced every year in the country, which is all the 2 and 3 wheelers, and one solution that fits all. The batteries are reprogrammable, so when they go in the station, they can actually program for the kind of vehicle you have, and it's a pay-as-you-go model. You don't own your assets. So all of a sudden, you start to get a cost structure that is very cost-effective. Products are the same price, and you've addressed range anxiety and long refueling time on this area. We've been testing this product for the last 6 months, and we just finished field trials recently, and we're deploying the first 500 units from next month on area. Very interestingly, we're deploying this on electric 3-wheelers, and with lead-acid batteries earlier, they were doing a little over 70 kilometers. With lithium-ion batteries, regular batteries, they were doing 100. And with swappable, they're doing 150 a day, and they've doubled their earnings. And this is a person who can earn now 8,000 rupees more per month. This is huge impact on society when you start to look at it. This is without subsidies, without anything, making business cases and making business sense where everyone through the value chain can make money out of this area. We do the same thing for buses on this area. So the basis of the technology is very smart batteries. These are lithium-ion advanced batteries. They're fully connected. They're very lightweight. They have 3 onboard computer systems. Our quick interchange stations that you saw for both 2 and 3 wheelers. Everything's connected to a smart network. We're online managing the whole thing, so a lot of connectivity on this and a connection to the renewable energy. So we did the second thing around buses, and the idea was a bus today needs around 300 kilowatt hours of battery, which is very heavy. You've taken that and replaced it with 60 kilowatt hours of battery, so you've saved around 2.5 tons on a bus, which means 35 more passengers or much more lower energy cost on this area here, right? And we showcased a solution earlier this year at the auto show, where it's a 650 kilogram battery pack that is able to be swapped in under 2 minutes on this area. It's robotically swaps. There's a lot of mechatronics, electronics, batteries, charging systems that are advanced. Each of these stations do 300 swaps a day. They're faster than probably refueling. And so therefore, as you think of scalability, you need very few in a city to start going ahead, and you can set the entire infrastructure in 2 months. For example, a city like Bangalore has approximately 83 LPG bunks that caters to 170,000 electric LPG 3-wheelers. You could put an equivalent swapping infrastructure in probably 2 months flat, 100 stations that could cater to a very large volume of this area. It's harder to do when you want to put 100,000 charging points on these areas. But with the throughput you have, you can really start to look at an acceleration way of scalability of businesses on this front. So what we see ourselves is we think that this ecosystem is only going to work when everyone comes together. It's going to be energy providers, OEMs, it's going to be mobility service providers, it's going to be cities coming together in this transformation. And I think there's a value for everyone in the ecosystem as we think about this front. So with this in mind, where do we see what could be the enablers in the ecosystem? So we've looked at 3 or 4 key buckets. I think from the OEMs, both startups and new companies, swappable solutions allow launch of products far quicker. With some OEMs you're working, we're able to get product in under 6 months together. In Leyland, from concept, we went to the first solution in 7 months on this front. You can continuously upgrade the technology because the battery technology changes so rapidly. It's hard to have this area, and it's modular and open architecture on this front. From a fleet operator, everyone wants to go to asset light. So if an electric 3-wheeler with a lithium-ion battery is costing you 2 lakhs, one without a battery costs you 1 lakh, which means you have 2 vehicles on your fleet. You earn twice as much and you pay as you go. And you create the kind of level of digital integration within what they use with the battery system and the energy ecosystem, right? So you think of cities, you can really look at multi-mode transportation because every vehicle is connected with energy and this area. We had Uber talk of that earlier. These become very connected to that. And it's also interoperable. I think cities look for one solution across multiple platforms and not different solutions for area. And there's a host of things that can be done on the grid as we look at enabling the entire ecosystem. So what do I see as opportunities? I think the auto industry, 7% of our GDP, it's going to be over 350 billion by 2030. And while there are standard products, I see the large opportunities, new opportunities in first mile, last mile vehicles, in shared mobility products that are India-centric on this area. We have not tapped on this area at all. The second thing is I think that the entire change of value chain is changing. 50% of the bill of material of electric vehicle is different. The new supply chain will be a $175 billion industry, which means motors, controllers, chargers, DC-DC converters, batteries, air conditioning. All of this will start to come and look at it in a very transformational way on this front. The third key area is going to be across new mobility solutions, which have a potential of probably 15% value add on the $300 billion opportunity that we look at on this area. And these are going to be business solutions, technologies of shared mobility, charging infrastructure, energy integration. And the last part is about energy. Energy will be replaced by batteries, charging, and swapping stations. The energy market in 2030 will be in excess of $200 billion to support this ecosystem, which means all the technologies of batteries, charging, swapping, V2G, connected cars, big data analytics are going to play a very, very large role on this area as we take this forward, right? So thanks a lot. I'll stop with that, try and keep on time.
This was amazing. I was just thinking through as you were speaking the number of problems that we spoke since morning. You came and solved them like this and said that, see, I can address so many problems with one innovative solution, which is amazing to hear. Without taking any more time, let me just move on. May I request Naveen, if you could share your thoughts, Managing Director of Hero Electric.
Thank you, Rajiv. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll try and keep this as crisp as possible. It's indeed a pleasure to be here today. So I'm going to talk to you, though this sector is a relatively new sector, but I don't think can be considered startups any longer. We've been in this space for 10 years now in the electric vehicle, and I've actually been handling electric vehicles since 18 years, where we actually started in 2001, way ahead of its time. So let me jump straight into it. This is just an overview of the industry. So this is, so if you look at the first slide, which talks about the electric vehicles, 30%, there's some figure of 30% by 2030. That, I think, is an extremely conservative number. Once the disruption starts, which has already begun in this sector, it's going to be much faster than what anybody is anticipating. And the numbers that we are looking at for the next 10 to 12 years are going to be much more aggressive than what has been looked at in the past. Electric vehicles, we already know, provide a much cleaner, much safer means of transport within a city, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. So we expect India to be a world leader in shared mobility in the next 12 years or so. So if you look at this data, so 20%, 24%, if you look at Europe, which is on the extreme low sharing, 4% of miles shared versus 28% of EV powertrains. And then you've got the US, which is slightly better than that. And then on top, which is very high EV penetration, we find China, which we already know is the largest EV market globally at this point of time, far larger than, I mean, there's no comparison between India and China at this point of time. But in the next 12 years, there is going to be some catch-up that happens from India. And a lot of it is actually going to move to shared mobility. So we are probably going to be ahead of China when it comes to shared mobility. And then we've got on the bottom, we've got Japan, which shows a large ownership, low penetration, and high sharing. So rentals, if you look at electric vehicles, if you're using less than 40 hours a week, then sharing makes a lot of sense for you. So going from one place to another, last mile connectivity, sharing makes a lot of sense. But the minute you go beyond that, then ownership plays a more important role. Now, my data here is mainly based on two-wheelers and not so much on the car sector or the three-wheelers. So I'm talking more from our segment. The automotive sector, four-wheelers would be a different data from this. So driving hours, less than 10 hours a week for most PV users, daily usage. So when we look at the curves, so it makes sense at some point of time when we are using the vehicles to have owned vehicles rather than shared vehicles or rather than leased or rented vehicles from a total cost of ownership perspective. Current problems with the IC engine sector. very low utilization of vehicles. When we look at automotive, only 4% utilization in about 24 hours. So that is why shared will actually play an important role. Air pollution. There are numerous reports which talk about air pollution, and we already know what the Delhi levels are. So 85% of vehicles, automotive vehicles on the roads are two-wheelers. 65% of the air pollution from the automotive sector comes from two-wheelers in India, and which is a very, very high number. Delhi is probably even higher. The vehicle density is much higher, and we have no way for the air to actually escape, so it actually gets trapped in. So the pollution levels that we are finding right now are going over 300, 400. In fact, around Diwali time, the figures were in excess of 900 in terms of the ppm levels. Time consuming, over 20 billion hours are spent commuting per year at a very, very low speeds. Average speeds in India have come down to anything from 15 kilometers, depending on which city you are in, up to 22, 23 kilometers in some of the major cities. Bangalore, I think, is down to about 14 or 15 kilometers an hour. Delhi is about 17 odd kilometers an hour. Very high number of accidents, which we already know about. India is the accident capital of the world. Electric vehicles, 2035. Now, this number is based on various reports and researches, but I think it's a very conservative number. So when you look at, there's really no concrete data on India and how India is going to move by then. So there is some estimations that Indian by 2035 is going to be about 60% of all vehicles sold are going to be electric. Now that includes two-wheelers, three-wheelers, public transport, four-wheelers, etc., and buses. So if you look at this data, so we've got China, of course, is the market leader, which is going to retain its leadership position simply because it started so early, and plus the policies that they have. It's a carrot and a stick approach that they use there. In some cities, you cannot register IC engine two-wheelers, which is not something that happens in India. So India will continue to grow very rapidly. The battery prices will come down, and I'll show you how they're going to come down. And that is going to result in the explosion of the market in India. So we've got China, which is going to be a major player, and we've got India, which is going to be a major player. Europe, US will be smaller players than what we look at India and China, simply because of the way that our vehicle population is increasing. And then we've got rest of Asia and rest of the world, which includes Latin America, which would play a substantial role as well. Battery technology, the batteries are expected to be as low as, I'm talking about all lithium, $180 a kilowatt hour by 2020. And there are some projections. There's a Bloomberg projection which talks about the price coming down as low as $75 a kilowatt hour by 2030. Now, there are, of course, some factors which are going to lead to it. Our own internal business plans, when we calculate about $150 a kilowatt hour by 2030. But it's certainly going to be more aggressive than that. The number of manufacturing facilities that are coming up for lithium around the world, whether it's China or it's Asia or even India, are substantial, which are going to bring in a lot of new batteries in the market. Plus the composition of batteries changing. So as we are going along, the content of lithium in a battery will continue to go down. The battery performance, it is following the Moore's law. So every year the prices will come down, the performance will improve. So larger batteries, longer range is bound to happen. In this, we've only looked at 2020, where we talk about 180. But like I said, it's expected to go down to about $75 a kilowatt hour. And this is not taking into account new batteries which are going to come into play, whether it's metal batteries or whether it's hydrogen fuel cells, etc., which are only going to come in the next couple of years. Consumer behavior, mobility investments, people are now moving more towards shared mobility, towards innovation, sustainability, and flexibility. And single vehicle ownership, people are going to move away with. The next generation Y is already looking at not the ownership generation as we have been. In terms of disruptive technologies and systems, we've got IC engine personal ownership, which is going to become very small in the coming future. And fossil autonomous vehicles and vehicle sharing is going to be the mainstay going forward. Drivers, global level and at India level, global is going to be manufacturing. The emission levels, as they're pushed down, they are going to result in more innovations for electric and for non-fuel-based vehicles. For example, Sweden's already talking about fuel-free transportation by 2030. There was some talk in India, but that's no longer, that's by 2030 or by 2040. FAME policy, which is already there in India, already helps electric vehicle adoption. The new policies which are expected, Delhi government, for example, yesterday announced 25% vehicles on Delhi roads by 2023, which is a very good plan and highly applauded by us, by SMEB, and by the company. And no license for setting up charging infrastructure, no driving license for shared mobility, etc., are some things which are going to be expected. Infrastructure drivers, which are going to result in innovations and movement towards electric vehicles, is going to be charging. Indian Railways is talking about putting charging infrastructure at the stations. The petrol pumps are already, the gas stations are talking about battery swapping and charging. And there is going to be a shift which is going to happen between both charging and swapping. And Chetan's already spoken about the swapping infrastructure. So I'm going to jump straight into started innovation. There's going to be charging infrastructure, the chargers itself, the technology, the software. Swapnil spoke about the software and hardware. And all of these are going to come in. There is innovation required for all. There is going to be disruptive technologies which are already coming in. If they're not already there, they're coming in. But the journey has just begun. So solutions for integrated network charging, e-bus, electric buses, three-wheelers, transport, and shared mobility, like I said, is going to play a very, very important role going forward. So that's the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Naveen. It has been always a pleasure listening to you. And I know you said that you have started about 10 years back with Hero Electric. Is it 10? 10 years, good. But I always find you wearing a jeans every time I meet you. So it's almost like you have it in your heart. I was looking at Swapnil earlier, and I felt that all of us seem to be just completely out of the startup culture, but it's good to see. May I request Charles. I'll have to follow the sequence which is there. Charles, I'm so sorry, because otherwise you'll go there will be a separate deck which will come up. May I request Charles, Managing Director of Volvo Cars, to share his thoughts, please.
I like being away from the podium a bit. But my name is Charles Frump. I'm the Managing Director for Volvo Cars in India here. And I hope most of you understand our business. We're a Swedish luxury car brand that has been selling cars now and in this space for over 91 years. So I think we're the definition of kind of an established player in this industry. But I think what I'd like to spend time with you is talk about how the industry is changing, and then talk a little bit about how Volvo is interacting with innovators and startups, and then talk a little bit about the best way to interact with us and other established players. So I won't cover too much here. I think, talking to my previous speakers here, the trends that are shifting this business now, electrification, autonomous drive, connectivity, I think are very, very well established. I can't help but, with the previous speakers talking about electrification, share our electrification vision is basically we're the first established automaker to make the pledge that starting from 2019, all of our cars will be electrified. So be it hybrids, plug-in hybrids, mild hybrids, or full electrics. Every new car we bring out will be in some way electrified. So we are completely bought into the electrified journey, and that's something I couldn't help but mention given our previous speakers. Let me delve in a little bit to, as an established OEM, I think it's not so easy for us to innovate and change as the startups and innovators that we have out in the audience. So we've really, I think, had to reach out to get some help. And I want to take you through some of the examples of how we're doing that with startups. Now, it may be a bit of a reach to say that some of the, I'll be talking a little bit about Amazon and Google. To say that these are startups is a little bit of a reach, but I'll get to some of the smaller startups as well in a moment here. But let me show you what we just unveiled in Los Angeles this week.
Volvo Cars is making a statement at this year's Automobility Show in LA. It's a mobility show, not a car show. so we're not bringing a car. Instead, we will demonstrate our vision for the future of mobility and start conversations about what a car can be. That's why the centerpiece of our stand is a rotating sculpture stating, "This is not a car."
So if you have automotive players going to auto shows without cars, I think we can see that the world is changing quite a bit here. And let me talk to you about some of the cases that we're using here. So first, we've partnered with Amazon, and again, not exactly a startup, quite established, but certainly not someone that was on the radar even 20 years ago in terms of partnering with an OEM. Let me show you how we're dealing with them. Cue the video. There we go.
In recent times, Volvo Cars has made great strides in digital consumer services, with the simple goal of making life easier for its customers. Now, the company is expanding its digital offering by partnering with Amazon to offer in-car delivery in the United States. In-car delivery, in partnership with Amazon Key, is rolled out nationwide in dozens of cities around the country.
We've been running in-car delivery in Europe since 2015. We believe that receiving a package should be as easy as ordering one. This offer will be available to all Volvo On Call subscribers and Amazon Prime members.
Receiving your Amazon delivery in your Volvo is simple. Just shop on Amazon and select in-car delivery at checkout to complete your order. On the day your packages will arrive, an authorized delivery driver locates your Volvo and places the package inside. You will receive a notification once the process is complete.
Simplification of experience and putting control directly in the hands of consumers are two things that are very central to Volvo's digital vision. We're very enthusiastic about realizing this vision. It'll delight customers and grow our business in the process.
So we're working with Amazon. We're also working with Google. I think all of us are, for those of us that have navigation systems in our cars, we really want them to be more connected and really the same technology that we're used to using. So we're going to be embedding Google Assistant. We're going to be having Google Play Store, Google Maps in our future, that we're not going to be developing those things anymore. We're going to be working with Google to do that. You've probably seen our partnership with Uber. So Uber is purchasing 24,000 cars with us and using them for their autonomous drive vehicles. I think most recently, last week, in China, kind of the most innovative of electronic markets, electrification markets, we made an announcement of our partnership with Baidu, where we'll be jointly developing electric autonomous vehicles with them. And I think that's very exciting. A bit smaller now as we move through. We've got some of the big players at Amazon and Google and Baidu. NVIDIA we're working with to do mapping for autonomous drive. We've established a joint venture with a supplier, Autoliv, that allows us to really take our autonomous drive solutions and offer that to other automakers. I think most relevant probably for this audience is how do we bring in smaller entrepreneurs? How do we bring in smaller innovators, smaller startups? We've decided to create a Volvo Cars Tech Fund. And really, this is how we're really reaching out with funding some of these companies. We've recently purchased part of a company called FreeWire that is a startup on mobile electric vehicle charging. So they will drive out to your car while you're waiting and they will charge it, which I think is innovative and a technology we would like to explore. We've partnered and purchased a piece of Luminar, which will help us really be cutting edge in the area of LiDAR and being able to be now scanning out 10 times farther than current technologies allow. But I think these are things that we are now reaching out to people like many of you to help us innovate, because quite honestly, what we're good at is building cars, right? We need some help in real innovation, and I think that comes not from one gigantic company, that comes from a real hive of great ideas and startups. So with this, if you wouldn't mind me presuming to give you a bit of advice on how to approach this. I guess, first of all, with us established makers, we are really grappling with this question of how are we going to handle the changes that are coming from autonomous drive, from electrification, from connectivity. And if this is a space, these are the spaces that you should be exploring if you want to work with us, and I think any established maker. I also would say, when I come to something like this, if you walk away with a stack of business cards like this, it's very rarely that you will get a call back. So what is the best way to deal with us? I think all companies are developing ways for you to contact us, right? Our fund is our way. And I think if you look at established OEMs, they're setting up ways to work with us, established channels. I would seek those things out, and really I think the best ideas will float to the top, and they need to. I think our supplier network is someone that we look to for technologies. So thinking not only of the very established OEMs, but we had a discussion with Panasonic here, for example. I think that there's possibilities for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers to really innovate in that area as well and get technologies to us in that. And then finally, as we move forward, we're talking about integrating Google, Apple, and these types of technologies. We will be using apps. And I think if you can develop an app that is automotive based, these things, it's an easy way to access, I think, us and to be into this space. So these are the areas that I think, if I step back and think about how we can innovate and how we can work together from the established world to the startup world, these are the things that I've been thinking about. So that's what I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Charles. It was amazing to listen to the kind of innovation that Volvo has been doing, the kind of collaboration that you have done with so many different organizations, and at the end, the kind of message that you have left. I'm sure that a lot of people who are into startups would look at how to collaborate with you and maybe develop something new. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
May I invite on stage Pankaj Rana. Pankaj is the business head for the mobility business of Panasonic.
So, good afternoon, friends. So, today I will be talking about what particularly Panasonic is offering into the mobility space. As most of us know, Panasonic is a Japanese big corporation. So this year we turned 100-year-old. So if we have to remain young rather than old, thank you. So if we have to be young rather than old, so we have to change our business model totally. What we have done in last maybe 10 to 15 years in Indian markets or other emerging markets, we have to change totally. So keeping these thoughts in our mind, so Panasonic Corporation has decided that India will be one of the key innovation center for Panasonic globally. So at this moment, globally, we have 3 innovation centers, one in Japan, another is in North America, and third will be in India. So India will be serving most of the emerging countries or emerging economies in next maybe 10, 20 or 100 years to come. So to keep these things in mind, so we have taken a lot of initiatives as far as collaborating with the various startups or various educational institutes in the Indian market also. So this journey is not very old in Indian market for Panasonic Innovation Center. In last 2 years particularly, we have collaborated with more than 15 universities in India. So we plan to set up 5 or 6 incubator centers in next 2 or 3 months with the major or the tier 1 or tier 2 even institutes in Indian market. And yesterday also we have signed an MOU with one of the big university in India that this is how we want to innovate and start developing solutions for the emerging economies or emerging markets. So Government of India has done a great program basically by launching Startup India in January 2016. And if we go by the agenda or if we see the whole program, it's very, very encouraging. So there are primarily 19 points which government has mostly covered in those areas. And if we see most of the development or innovations at this moment is happening in various technologies. Biggest, of course, is the data analytics, then is the Internet of Things, then artificial intelligence, AR, VR. So Panasonic is playing a very pivotal role in this space. If I particularly talk about the auto industry, how Panasonic is connected with the auto industry, so I think a few of us knows that Panasonic is quite big in the automotive industry also. In North America alone, Panasonic is doing more than $7 billion business with the automotive players. So we are quite big in the infotainment space. So infotainment is one where we have collaborated with most of the Japanese maker, US maker, and now in talk with the Indian makers also. And second space where Panasonic is offering a lot of solutions to the for the EV market, particularly we are the sole supplier for Tesla batteries globally. But as we are supplying to the Tesla, so it becomes sometimes difficult to convince our Japanese counterparts that how to collaborate with Ether in India. For example, Swapnil is talking with us from last 1 year, so we are finding it little difficult to collaborate for the Indian markets conditions, and we make battery cells, but we need to collaborate with, for example, Hero, for example, Ether. So these things, with the help of India Innovation Center and very indigenous product, we are working on, and we want to collaborate in a way India is growing up. So now, of course, my Japanese counterparts or our senior management in Japan has taken very great clue from the Indian market that if they have to do something bigger or sustainable for years to come, so they need to collaborate with the Indian ecosystem and Indian regulatory body also. So as we all know that India is the third largest startup tech hub globally, and ease of doing business, we are continuously improving. But on the innovation front, we are still at number 60th. Of course, we are improving year on year. So this requires a couple of things most of us know. It requires the innovation in the forms of, in the industry of ICT, and second in the form of some patent regulation, that how we are filing the patent and how we are complying the things which a world is offering to us or world is giving to us. So if we have to develop India as an innovation economy, or in the same line, Panasonic as a company to innovate such things, so we need to be very, very competent in all those, in these two perspectives or these two areas. So as a startup economy, for Panasonic to be number one, or for India to be a leading country in the startup economy, so this is the basic startup ecosystem we all know, and we from Panasonic also collaborating, most of my friends or seniors in the DICE also collaborating in a such a way. So here we see the startups are very agile. So they are very, we have seen Swapnil, I think he must be below 30, and he has set up a close to a unicorn $1 billion corporation for him, correct? So because they are very, very agile. On another side, organizations like Panasonic, which are very, very big, so which are hierarchical driven. So how we set up a startup culture in a bigger organization and how we collaborate with them. So this is what will set up a great pace or great speed of execution as far as new technologies are concerned. So here in India, we are connecting, as I said, with the startup incubators, with a lot of educational institutes, and taking a lot of help from the government of India also. And these are the primarily, if you see, two key enablers for us to make it happen. One, of course, the large enterprises. We have to collaborate with most of our technology partners, even with the OEM makers also. For example, at this moment, if you have to develop something, so you can't skip or escape basically the Google, the Amazon, the likes of Google or Amazon or other technology partners in the form of Qualcomm or MediaTek. So we have to collaborate with them. And then we have to take up or match up the pace of startups growing up in Indian markets by doing some incubators. For example, Panasonic Corporation sitting in Japan might be thinking that Tesla is my customer. But who knows, Ather becomes the Tesla of India, and we totally miss the bus, correct? So this is how we have to play a very, very pivotal role as a Panasonic or as a startup economy or as a startup organization in the Indian market. Everyone is talking about few key enablers, what is happening and what needs to be done. And we all know that it requires a proper mentoring, some enterprise partnerships, and further improvement in ease of doing business. So this is what Panasonic is offering, and I will be happy to connect with most of you once our session will be over. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Pankaj. Great to hear a company with such a large history, trying to be young once again, and amazing to see some of the initiatives that you have taken. Before opening to the entire team out here for questions and answers, one thing that came to my mind when you were speaking, saying that we are now number 3 probably in terms of number of startups which come in India. I don't know, maybe after Israel, maybe after US is where India seems to be ranking. But so, what was coming to my mind is, you said something about how to become number 1.
There were two of the panel members here who come from actually Bangalore. I have one on my right hand side, and the youngest person, of course, is not there now. What is it that is there in the air of Bangalore that you see so much amount of activity happening around startups? Is it that there is some ecosystem out there which other cities also need to work, build, which will help in terms of making us move from that number 3 to number 2 to number 1? Bangalore is the little Israel that we see out here.
I think Bangalore's been, it had many things. It had the IT side, it had the BT side, it had electronics, it had institutes. 50% of the people from Bangalore who live there aren't from Bangalore originally, so very cosmopolitan. So you had people from all over coming in. And I think that the 90s with Infosys and a few companies that did well had got stock options and showed that you can make entrepreneurs inside companies. These people went out and started businesses, and others understood it. The VC community understood that. And so I think it slowly built an ecosystem of people and technologies, and of course, very good weather.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let me open this for questions and answers. We are going to give more opportunity to all of you. Any questions that you may have, please raise your hands. And as stated earlier, a simple one-liner, crisp question.
Hi, this is Ruchir here. I have a question. I mean, we just saw a young entrepreneur in Aether sharing his experience. So with respect to what you people had and what new entrepreneurs are doing, what's that gap you are seeing both in terms of positives and possibly the challenges which people are not able to see, or which you want to leave it as a note of lessons for we all guys who will be possibly trying similar things? I had an opportunity working with Chetan though, so maybe good from Naveen, from you first.
So the question is whether a startup versus the lessons.
Lessons, both for the youngsters, what they are doing right, what possibly
in the EV sector. See, we have to realize there's a chicken and egg situation in India at this point of time. So there is a very, very large tier 1 and tier 2 automotive component manufacturing industry which exists. Now, I've attended a number of these conferences, and I go and talk at a number of these conferences. There's so much of fence sitting which happens. So all of these companies are looking at, okay, what is the volume that you can promise us? What is the kind of projections that you have for the next year? And what is the capital expenditure that you can do in terms of the tooling, etc.? And basis on that, I will allocate resources to you. Now, no new industry is going to get created this way. So what will have to happen is they will have to allocate resources, the tier 1, tier 2, the technology manufacturers, the mechanical guys, the tire manufacturers, everybody. They will have to allocate resources in order to say, okay, this is how the market is going to transition. There is one shift which is already happening, and that is more towards Bharat 6, but that is again the emissions industry. So if we believe that the market is going to shift to electric vehicles, which we as a company certainly do, and there is a lot of other companies which do, then the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, they have to start gearing up that way. In which case, they cannot look at volumes in the same way that they look at IC engine. That's a 50-year-old industry which has been established for a long time. And you've got a new set of industry which is coming in, which is possibly going to overtake it, or I wouldn't say cannibalize, but it's going to overtake and it's going to transition. The IC is going to transition into electric, as we are seeing in the West. So the recommendation to startups is one, your cost of operating is going to be higher as compared to an IC. So that is something that you've got to absorb. Second is you've got to stop comparing yourself to a IC engine product, because the minute you're comparing like-to-like performance, specifically in the two-wheeler more so, the price of your product is going to be 2 to 2.5 times higher. So there is a special need for an electric vehicle as against an IC. There are a separate set of customers who are going to buy these vehicles, whether it is ease of use, whether it's a technology, whether it is older people buying it because it's just more comfortable for them to use an electric vehicle as against an IC, or it's for the commercial aspect of it, or it's an ecology point of it. So ecology going forward is going to play a very, very important role. So those are some of the aspects that one should look at. Another thing that you have to also understand is that there is nothing known as a perfect product. There is no perfect technology. Everything is evolving. So at some point of time, I've seen so many startups who are in the startup phase for many, many years, who have not even come to the commercialization, simply because they are in the process of perfecting the products. So there is one part of it which is perfecting the product, but that is going to happen over a period of time. So if you think you've got a product which is market ready, then go with it. Go with your gut, launch the product. Get the product out into the market. The more people that you get to try out your products, the more awareness is created and the market is going to expand. If you just keep on sitting and just developing a product, that's not going to work. So you have to get out into the market. You have to get those experiences in. So those are some of the, is that the question? Is that what the?
Thanks, Naveen. A lot of new mantras which are coming, which are very different from what we have been otherwise learning for so many years. Chetan, your response to his question.
I think that it's great to see a younger generation today getting into it. They're coming from a very different perspective. And there's a lot of nuances on connectivity and electronics that are very different. And they are probably closer to that part of it. I also see that the ecosystem is changing. When we started Reva in the late 90s, getting funding and stuff was impossible. Today, it's very easy to get that kind of funding if you have it. So the ecosystem is changing. And I also think that there's a maturity among the supply chain on this area, where today it's easier to get batteries, it's easier to get charging systems, easier to get motors. 15 years ago, it's impossible to get any of that on this front. So it means that startups can probably get to market much quicker with a more ready ecosystem, with a new set of customers and advancements in technology. So I think what was difficult earlier is going very easy. And I think the disruption that you're going to see by startups, is going to be much higher. It's in many ways, if you think of what happened in the phone industry 15 years ago, everything was vertically integrated. If you look at the phone industry today, you get a battery from somewhere, electronics from somewhere, display, put an OS in your end market, and you sell 1 million units within 6 months. Think of electric two-wheelers and a lot of the form factors moving that way. You will get A, B, C, and D, put it together and move very quickly. Development cycles from 36 months will become under 12 months. The way manufacturing will be done will be very distributed. The way technology will be plug and play. So we're going through a multi-domain transformation. And in this, startups can play a lot because it doesn't need that much capital. It doesn't need a lot of other things. You can sell online. You don't have to have a brick and mortar thing. You can service via your phone and fix 80% of your problems. So the transformation is quite large. So I think that's where a new player coming in could think very differently, which is more difficult for someone who's established.
Thank you, Chetan. Nabil, with your permission, we are actually very much on time, but if you allow one last question which you could take. Yeah. Thanks, Nabil. One last question, maybe a gentleman out there, he seems to be most eager. I'm very sorry, maybe you can catch up with the panel later. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, my name is Anuj. I'm from the World Auto Forum, and I totally agree with Mr. Maini on the innovation and the startup aspect. My question is on the requirement and the viability of the charging network. Even in today's newspaper, if you read, the biggest clog, as they say, to the EV revolution in India is the lack of charging infrastructure. My basic question is that, as what even Mr. Bhargav Sahab had mentioned, that 2/3 of the petrol consumption in India is by two-wheelers. If you take many of the government reports, more than 80-85% of the vehicles comprises the two-wheelers, the auto, and and these vehicles can easily be charged at home, office, or by an innovative battery swapping solution. So, for an EV revolution per se, do we really need the EV charging network to get these low-hanging fruits up and ready?
I think for personal mobility, if people have access to their homes and you're doing 30-40 kilometers a day, you can come in and plug it at home and would work very well with two-wheelers. As you go to shared mobility, you may have a sudden delivery, you may have something else. You don't know if you're going to 40 kilometers or 140 kilometers in a day. You need flexibility on this area, and that's where a swapping infrastructure becomes very important. And as you start to get very high in scale, then even parking of a lot of two-wheelers and charging becomes a problem. And there again, I think swapping infrastructure makes a lot of sense. So you're very right. You probably need a simpler infrastructure. The power levels are much lower. You could also have one solution that fits multiple form factors, because most bikes and scooters are similar looking, and so space and power levels are quite similar, and so it's easier to create form factors that are very simple. My feeling, I think, is that an Indian consumer wants equivalent or better performance at a lower price. And I don't think there have been enough products today offering that on this front. I do believe with swapping and other innovative solutions, you can get that, where instead of spending extra money on batteries and chargers, you put that into powertrain. So you get outperform an electric, you can outperform the a gasoline vehicle, hands down on acceleration, and give them cheaper operating cost, and give them faster refueling, and make it digital. That's a transformation I think we can see. And I think the next 5 years you'll see a lot of this happening. You've seen some success stories already in Taiwan and other places which have transformed on these solutions.
I'm just going to add, can I just add a little bit to that, the charging infrastructure. I'm again talking more from two-wheelers, because the requirement of charging infrastructure for two-wheelers versus three-wheelers versus cars is very different. And I'm going to speak more about two-wheelers than anything else at this point of time. It's a misnomer that charging infrastructure is the hindrance for growth of two-wheelers. Now, the reason for that is that two-wheelers, specifically the electric vehicles, they give you a 50 to 60 or 70 kilometer range and could go up to 120, 150 kilometers depending on the battery configuration that you choose. So if you're a heavy user, you could easily have a battery which is going to take you 100 kilometers a day. But if you're not a light user, you don't need that level of a battery. So you can cheat. The batteries are modular now. They're 1 kilowatt hour or 1.5 kilowatt hour batteries, which are portable. So you can take the battery out, take it to your apartment, take it into your house, or plug it into your normal power socket the way you charge your mobile phone. So charging infrastructure will certainly help. What it will do is, once you've got enough charging infrastructure here, your battery sizes can go down. You no longer need a range of 70, 80 or 100 kilometers on your vehicle, in which case your price goes down, in which case the volume, the quantum, that the volume of vehicles on the road will increase. It becomes more affordable. But it's a chicken and egg situation again. We already know that, the scientists have already said that chicken came first before the egg because of certain reasons. Now, in this case, once the vehicle population is on the road, as we are seeing, the charging infrastructure and other ecosystem will follow with it. India is not a country where we set up the whole infrastructure and then the vehicles come. We've seen that even in our roadways, and we see that everywhere. So once the population of vehicles is enough, infrastructure, there is enough people who are there, who are entrepreneurs, will set up infrastructure, and it's already happening.
Thanks, Naveen. I'm very sorry, but I think that was the last question that we could take, because I have one of my panel members who has a flight to catch. Thank you. Thanks all of you for being here and sharing your thoughts. Thanks a lot.